Hello everyone, strawman93 here once again, and you thought I was lost in the ether for a couple of days. Well, I have decided to make a video. I am currently holding the blue snowball handheld, so it might, I don't know, be a bit different than usual. I might be back and forth between the microphone, but since the desktop has not been packed away yet to the new flat, I thought I'd, just use it, because I can't stand and watch someone who I respect very much create such silly videos, such as this, and this person that I respect very much is Tealday. So, what has Tealday done? Well, he has made a video called Intellectual Rigor versus Ponage, and this video is where he laments the fact that the anti-feminist genre, which we'll be getting into in a little while, is just being full of ponage videos and poners and debunkers, and not enough intellectuals making intellectual videos addressing the core concerns and the core issues and the core reasons behind the feminism and what feminism believes and what's causing all this shit in society. Now, you'll see that I don't agree with this, which is why I'm making the video, and why make an elongated intro when we can have Tealday make his first point for us. Go ahead, Mr. Day.
Tealday, let's talk about the so-called manosphere, and specifically on the topic of intellectual rigor versus straight-up slam-dunk mic-dropping ponage.
Now, this is just a little nitpick before we actually get into it. He assumes that all the people who are anti-feminists are part of the manosphere, which is not true. We're not part of the manosphere. I don't consider myself part of this manosphere. I don't know much people who consider themselves part of the manosphere. I cannot talk for them, but I do know a lot of them do not consider themselves that. You have to ask them, because we're not all mgtows, we're not all MRAs, and I'm not sure all egalitarians, such as myself, would like to be a part of that. I mean, it's a good thing. It deserves to exist, but he's labelling us all together into one massive group, which I suppose is for convenience. I don't think he would generalize so badly, but I just thought I'd nitpick that little point.
This topic today was certainly inspired by a couple of videos I've seen recently that I thoroughly recommend you check out first, so that you hopefully can see why I'm taking the tack on this topic that I am. First is The Red Pill Then and Now by Stardust, and the second, The Manosphere by Coltane. In these videos, both address the current state of the loosely connected groups that are often called the manosphere of the internet, the loose alliance of mgtow, the men's rights movement, pick-up artists, and the general anti-feminist crowd.
And therein lies a problem in why I disagree with a lot of this video. He's grouping us all together. The pickup artists do not like the MRAs. This is not a loose alliance. They do not like each other, the two communities, mainly because feminists keep conflating the two, but also because they're ideologically opposed. Although there might be some overlap. There may be some PUAs who are MRAs, and there might be MRAs who are PUAs, although that's the same thing. He's generalizing us, and the fact that he is basically using two people, I don't know about Coltane, but I do know about Stardust, who are quite red pill and very mgtow, that intellectual side of the mgtow movement. You talk about gynocentrism and hypergamy, etc. You can see that his content now and this video is perhaps far too biased towards that point of view, and maybe even influenced a bit too much, and it's clouded his vision. But continue.
So today I thought I'd throw in a few thoughts of my own into this arena, because I find it quite an interesting thing to muse about, and it's something I've been considering for a while. To have a proper moment of introspection and a good look at your own place within the ecosystem that is the internet, and which online communities you frequent and your roles within. As Stardust has pointed out, anti-feminism has become a genre in and of itself on YouTube.
A genre in and of itself. A genre within and of itself. How is anti-feminism a genre in and of itself? This is something that I can't quite understand, because as far as I'm aware, the genre is response, it's debate, it's, well, intellectual, and to an extent, ponage. It is a subject that falls within that genre, or several different genres. How is the subject now a genre? But then again, you can argue that atheism is a genre, but it's interesting that it's now a genre. But maybe we have different ideas of what constitutes as a YouTube genre, so maybe there's that.
We see almost daily new channels springing up attempting to debunk the latest offerings from feminists all around the internet. To be clear here, I don't see this as inherently bad. I've made no secret of my position towards feminism, that I consider it, at best, a misguided but benevolent movement, and at worst an outright hate-filled racist, sexist, authoritarian female supremacist movement, and as such, Anything that helps to clear the air of their intentional misinformation on whatever topic feminism has deemed is problematic today is ultimately a good thing, as long as they are addressing the objective empirical data on the issue and demonstrating the flaws in the supposed science of the issue or the logical and philosophical inconsistencies of their rhetoric.
But
in reality, what I've been seeing is a rise of the poner, the so-called debunker, the so-called skeptic.
Ah, a new thing! Ponage! The Poner! A new thing, yes. It's not like it wasn't around in 2006 in the atheist community, and hell, even some of the anti-feminists today who are prominent were doing similar videos to atheists and what they're doing now in 2006. I mean, there's a reason why Dick Coughlin's Ponage Olympics was called the Ponage Olympics. This is not a new thing. This has never been a new thing on YouTube or even in this so-called community, which I'm going to go along with Teal there just for convenience's sake. I've seen many of my favourite YouTubers and you been making videos for quite a few years now. Some of them date back even longer, and they've been doing responses and ponage, etc, for all those years. It's not a new thing. It's becoming more popular, but it is not a new thing. This is something that people have been doing for a while. And how is it problematic, Teal dear?
People who don't actually address the core premise of either the ideas nor the reasoning behind the motivation, but instead will simply offer what is often termed a rebuttal, but in reality is little more than calling the feminist in question a fucking moron, and saying, you're wrong because you're stupid, with very little substance behind the argument.
I'm afraid, Teal dear, that I'm going to have to say, citation needed on that. Who are these people that have been making these arguments? Because as far as I'm aware, and I watch a lot of YouTubers, I've not seen this. I've not seen people say you're wrong because you're a moron. I've seen people actually use statistics. I have seen people actually debate their points. If anything, I've seen it from the other side and not ours. Now, I don't deny that these people happen to exist. Indeed, they probably do. We do have some people who are not very good at debating or good at formulating arguments. But I need some evidence, because right now it seems like you're trying to set up a straw man.
In some cases, this is all that is warranted and needed. A simple rephrasing of the argument, swapping a couple of words such as black for white or women for men, or any descriptive word for Jews or gays, is in some cases all that's needed to show the blatant bigotry or double standards of the feminist position.
Wait, so are they using actual debating tactics, or are they just calling them morons, which is an ad hominem? Make your mind up.
In other cases, however, this is used when a better and more in-depth analysis is what is needed, to actually address the facts and figures of some of these issues, or indeed to look beyond, to understand the ultimate cause at the beginning.
Really? Is it? Because when we're discussing feminism and debating feminism with these people who on YouTube tend to be, like us, laymen, although both of you and me have degrees, maybe even you have more than me, I don't know. Most people aren't really as academic as that, and they like to debate in layman's terms and use layman's kind of styles. I don't know if that makes any sense, people, but the point is, most people don't have the resources, they don't have the knowledge or the know-how to find all these things that you use, and so they need the statistics, they need to use these debating tactics in order to put across their arguments and debunk these people. Now, they do it to us as well, because a lot of them are also not as in-depth and in knowledge as you are, or to a lesser extent me, though I'm probably more of a layman than you are, and I think that's okay. I think sometimes it's impossible for some people to go as in-depth as you can, or as people like Sargon can, because you do know that a lot of these academic papers and journals are locked behind paywalls, and some people just do not have the patience, the money, the time, or the will to even do this. Plus, some people don't want to make very long videos, and the vast majority of the YouTube audience do not want to watch 50-minute videos debunking feminists. Now, I have done this before in my videos. I have done this plenty of times, but it's true. I'm not being a hypocrite, I'm just pointing out the truth. People, on average, don't want to see this. They tend to watch about 7 minutes of a video and give it a like. So sometimes, as much as an in-depth analysis would be required and would be the best option, it's not always the option you can take.
And honestly, I fear that this rise in flimsy debunking content creators, while useful in swelling the ranks of visible opposition to modern feminism and social justice, actually does nothing to help in either its downfall or in helping people to understand the reason why things have become the way they currently are, and if anything, actually end up working counter to their own good intentions.
How so? For starters, religion would not be as big as it is on YouTube now if it wasn't for the ponage that they receive. Now, yes, some people back in the day probably did just say you're a moron because you're religious, but they were a minority, and they are a minority even now. Most of the people who did these ponage videos tended to be both academic and ponage, in fact, completely debunking religion through the use of an intellectual manner without any humour or anything. It's still ponage, is it not? Without two of the two side by side, or a mix of both, Christians and creationists, and to a lesser extent Islamists and moderate Muslims, could not be where they are today, which is practically non-existent. You have no way of proving whether or not the approaches that people like me, and Spino, Fiffin, Griffiths, Hadbar Celine, etc., use actually harms what we're trying to do, harms the debate against feminism, harms the fight against their authoritarian attack on free speech and freedoms in general. You cannot prove that. I'm intrigued to see as to how you will prove that, because so far you've not even given me any examples of YouTubers doing this, or even people on the internet at large. It doesn't have to be YouTube.
In doing a call-out video or a takedown video or a debunking video, phrases I hear from people on a daily basis as requests, when that video takes the form of nothing more than a string of witty insults and put-downs, this only serves to solidify the feminist or social justice advocates' views that the world is a terrible place full of misogynists or bigots or racists or whatever ist or ism they'd care to label you, and then be thrown back into the social justice cauldron of evidence that perpetuates its own existence.
Again, who's doing this? This is nothing but fallacious argumentation from these people, and I think we deserve to know who is doing it. Who are these examples? Don't be afraid. Just show us. It's cool to tell someone that they're wrong, and it's cool to take the criticism and address it, right? Isn't this what we like to practice and preach in this community? That it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to call other people out and to improve as a human being as a result, to intellectually improve? Again, this is just becoming a bit of a straw man, because who's doing this? I can't think of anyone in this ownage type of YouTube video making where we don't use stats and statistics and proper debating argumentation. I can't think of anyone who doesn't do that in our spheres. I've seen feminists and religious people do it, but I cannot say the same for us.
For every video that looks at the data behind a study or a piece of supposed evidence that social justice feminist will use and demonstrates the flaws in methodology, sample size, etc., there are 10 that basically just say, you're wrong because you're dumb. Also, you're ugly.
Citation needed yet again, Mr. Edgelord Teal'c. You cannot prove that statistic. That statistic is made up. I do agree that when someone becomes particularly notorious for making a particularly bad video, there are loads and loads of responses, but that is because people really want to respond to this video and debunk it and to put their own spin on these different videos. Many people choose not to do so because so many people are doing it, or one person in particular did it, and that says all they need to say, so they go on a different video. And in fact, it's strange how you think that these ponage videos are incapable of showcasing how flawed the research and the argumentation of these feminists actually are, when I hate to quote myself, I know it's a little bit arrogant of me to do so, but please just bear with me. In my recent Lacey Green video, I don't know if I was the first person to point this out, but I did kind of popularise it because a few YouTubers have used it. She used a clip of an Idaho police sheriff talking about how a lot of the rape cases he is involved in dealing with are fake, and she tried to say that this is some kind of sexist thing, that this is what all the police think, when actually it was a local issue and that was relative to his position. And he says, we get a lot of rape cases that are actually real, but most of them aren't, and it's not even what you imagine. It's not the horror stories like Mattress Girl, it's just misunderstandings, breakdown in communications, etc, etc. But she made it look like he was a chauvinist pig and that the police don't care. I looked up this little local news segment which which hardly anybody has seen, and showcase it to the world, proving she was a liar. I don't know if I was the first, but I think I've maybe popularised it a little bit. It's probably a bit arrogant, but nonetheless, if I'm a ponage person, that is what we're capable of, and that's what we do on a daily basis. But of course, that doesn't prove your 10 videos to every 1 video of bullshit theory, but let's continue.
It is important to note here that even videos that do cover the data and address the core of the arguments will also still be dismissed as proof of misogyny, or simply hand-waved away as harassment.
I agree, Tilda, and it's good to see that you've pointed that out, almost as an aside. But you see, if what we're doing isn't helping, and what you're doing isn't helping, then how are you different? How is your approach superior? That's what I don't get. Because they'll hand wave us away as much as they will hand wave you away, and both call us harassers and misogynists. Please, do explain how you are better.
But to the outside viewer, to see one person spouting rhetoric and the other countering with hard data provides a clear winner.
Does it? They might not even agree with you. They might not even believe you. They might come out as neutral as they'd come out. Maybe even more confused with the amount of data that you use, or maybe they don't understand it. Maybe they will come out and believe you. But I'm going to go on a hypothetical thing here and say, well, okay, so if what we're doing is wrong because we do not provide information, even though in order to combat the feminist argument we have to, what's the alternative here? Us providing the sources and allowing the person to make up their own mind, although not many of us probably do, but that's what I do. That's what Spino does. We have the sources, we lay out our argument, and it's up to the person to decide for themselves and to research for themselves if we are right and if the feminist is wrong or right. What's your alternative? To me, hypothetically, it sounds like you should just spoon feed these people the information, because when they see this feminist who is just spouting rhetoric with their own, in brackets, faulty logic and reasoning and facts, you win automatically because your facts are correct and your presentation is better because it's not rhetoric, it's just fact-based rebuttal. One, you sound suspiciously like a ponage video creator, and it seems like you just want to spoon feed these people and you think or assume that these people will automatically believe you and think you're right because you did a different video, when maybe what you're doing is spewing rhetoric. I mean, later on in the video it seems like you are. mgtow rhetoric to be precise, but please, continue. Because to you, Tilda, people on average are just not intellectually curious. Not as curious as you are, or as intellectually smart as you are. Well, I slightly disagree with that. I think if their curiosity is piqued, they will find it out for themselves and are smart enough to come to their own conclusions. I can't say the same for you.
To look in and see two people swapping rhetoric and insults demonstrates neither side to be the victor, and leaves the viewer to decide on their own on which side they favour best. And we'll see why that is a problem later, especially when one of those parties is female or is claiming to act in the interests of women. This is something that I think needs to be addressed, and is something I do not exclude myself from. There have been people even stating to me that I'm not as funny as I used to be in older content, and this I think is true, and is because, as I've said before, I've made a conscious effort of late to move away from the old pattern that I began in, of frequent jokes and mockery with occasional data, to frequent or entirely data with the occasional joke or mock. Something that, while not as entertaining, I think, actually helps to combat at least the surface problem.
So you admit that it can only scratch the surface at the very least. So how exactly is your way now more superior to mine, or your old one? By the way, it's funny that you mentioned that your old videos were either one or the other, or with little bits and bobs, because as far as I remember, you were charming and funny and informative. You had the big facts and data behind your arguments. You used them in your arguments. It wasn't one or the other, it was a bit of both. Now, it depended largely on the video. Maybe sometimes there was something that did deserve pure mockery, but you didn't do it as an argument, you did it as mockery, as a joke, parody almost. Which makes me wonder, why do you still do those TLD doxed videos then, if you're trying to move away from that? I'm just wondering, that's all.
Which is why I couldn't help but notice any supposed rebuttal to me is always aimed at really old content from back in the days when I was but a humble road sign.
Or maybe you just don't get many responses in the first place. I find it hard to believe that they are not picking on your videos because there's not a lot of facts in them.
I see no inherent problem, as I've said, with the simple entertainment of the punchy, snarky, witty, humorous response.
Yet we are exasperating the problem. Make your mind up. Do you have a problem with us or not? Because apparently we're making everything worse.
Entertainment is important, and serves as an entrance point for people into the more rational, empirical, data-driven side of this cultural clash we've seen growing in recent years. It's a humour-laden reminder to people, not directly involved, but who are just beginning to see the effects of social justice, feminism, and cultural Marxism in their lives, that they are not alone in thinking this is strange, weird, or outright crazy.
Or we might be able to do these ponage videos with that serious, in-depth knowledge. Just saying, we're not just an entry-level thing, and you are the ultimate final form of Freezer.
However, I think there's a growing disparity between the numbers of people doing the humour entertainment side the easy attention-grabbing part that, as we've seen from the explosion of channels doing it, that can lead to some pretty easy e-fame, and the number of people willing to dig deeper and do the legwork to interpret and understand data and its underlying causes.
But that is a natural disparity. It's natural. There are always going to be more people who are more suitable to the entertainment side, although that's a loose term in and of itself. Some of these people are just as intellectual as you are, but choose not to do that kind of thing. Some of these people, they're just not capable, or they just don't feel that they are capable of doing what you want to do and what Stardust does, and what a lot of people do, where they are the fact-based, entirely serious approach, the radio approach, as Stardust likes to call it, I think. So they do the entertainment thing. They take the facts that you have found and put out there, or they research it themselves to their best degree, and they put it out in easy to do fashion for them and for the audience to digest. I fail to see how that is wrong. That's always going to happen. Most people are not like you, Teal'c, or me. Even I don't do what you do.
So what are these underlying causes I've mentioned throughout this video? These, I think, are still the most contentious points within the camps of the manosphere, and things that I've addressed to varying degrees on this channel over the years, things that go beyond the social and the political, and things that even within this same circle people still seem to have a deep knee-jerk aversion to even considering. Topics which are often met with the phobic cries of, "You're just as bad as the feminists," the topics of gynocentrism and hypergamy.
A phobic response, as if they are some kind of irrationally scared of it. Maybe these people don't believe in it, or maybe they don't think it's relevant. You and the mgtows may find it relevant, but they don't. But at the same time, I'm wondering, what has this got to do with the whole intellectual rigor versus ponage thing? What has this got to do with anything? If you wanted to make a video on hypergamy and gynocentrism, you could make a video on those two topics. In fact, you could make 2 videos about those topics, but instead you're putting them into this video, which could have been about 11 minutes long, and now you've elongated it into a 22-minute video, making my task a lot harder.
Things which have overwhelming data to demonstrate the effects and existence of in various fields, and yet still remain the hardest pills to swallow, and I think this stems from people's absolute lack of will to accept that biology can be a part of certain facets of behaviour.
People, are you beginning to get this feeling that I'm feeling? That maybe this whole 11-minute rant, quote-unquote rant, so to speak, is nothing but a setup for this main bit here? Let's continue.
Tell someone that their brain is wired to prefer sugar, fats and salts, high-caloric foods, a behaviour that is irrational in itself, these things being nothing more than carbon, hydrogen and oxygen mashed together in various forms, and yet they trigger in the brain a massive chemical response, endorphins, dopamine, etc. Tell people this and demonstrate it, and they have no trouble accepting that things such as the obesity epidemic, owing to overabundance of fatty, sugary foods in the rich Western nations, is simply a misappropriation and maladaptation of a behaviour bred into humans over a series of tens of thousands of years, dating back to before humans were even human, where individuals with a propensity for eating these things gained more calories, grew larger, stronger, more intelligent, whatever, and thus reproduced more, or had offspring better suited to their environment, and thus the feedback loop of biology and environment continued ever onwards in this direction, with individuals who had more of these receptors in their brain to feel this food rush, breeding more than those who had fewer, until it became the majority trend of the species in whatever geographical area that adaptation was best suited.
It is, isn't it? As you can see here, he has completely shifted the whole subject autistically. In fact, proudly autistically. Even I could not do such a spin on this. It seems to me that this was nothing but a ruse, a ploy. It seems to me that this was just a stick to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, look what I'm talking about. That was simply to get you into this video and listen to what I have to say about hypergamy and biology, my mgtow ideology. But let's continue and we shall discuss this even further, because I'm not really interested in what he has to say about this. He has a lot of good things to say, but we're doing it in the context of this video and what he said before. So if you want a rebuttal on his views on this, you're probably not going to get it, because I actually don't know an awful lot about this. But please continue, Teal'c.
This is not contentious. We are told this every day in the media. It's accepted by all but the most staunch social constructionists, often within the fat acceptance movement. Tell certain people within the so-called manosphere that men's and women's aggregate differences in behaviour in society come about as a result of basic socio-biological differences, that men's higher rates of testosterone lead to an increased likelihood of risk-taking behaviour, something necessary to succeed in business, thus explaining why there are more male CEOs, but also more male homeless. After all, big risks either pay off big or fail big. And again, only the most staunch social constructionists will find this objectionable. The blank slate theorists. Although given the overwhelming data against blank slate theory, I'm still surprised that there are any of them left.
Can you begin to see a pattern in what he's trying to say here? He's talking about feminists and fact acceptance movement people and constructionists, yet he's speaking to the manosphere and about the manosphere. He's comparing them to these people in the manosphere who don't agree with his rather radical mgtow philosophy on biology, which may be true or untrue, it doesn't matter. The point is, he is shaming these people, he is painting these people as dishonest, shallow comedians, to quote my friend Spinosaurus as we had a discussion on this, because that's apparently what we are. We don't agree with him. We don't believe in hypergamy or anything like this. We believe in something completely different, therefore we're dishonest, because apparently the facts suggest otherwise. We don't believe in the facts. Maybe we have different facts, Teal'c, but please, do go on.
Tell this to them and then fill in the gaps about how the feedback loop of division of labour and sexual dimorphism necessitated certain social layouts, that is, hypergamous gynocentrism. Men being the on average more physically competent sex, on average greater muscle mass, higher aerobic capacity, with bodies that adapt to these things quicker and at higher thresholds, and women's need for a period of gestation for their babies and an extended nursing time led to societal arrangements that were made to benefit and protect women and encourage men to be of utility in this, is suddenly the line that gets crossed, and for whatever reason, this cannot happen.
He's strawmanning people. He's strawmanning people who may disagree with him by saying, oh, you're just as bad as the feminists now. This does happen. We have seen people like Shoe on Head, like Armoured Skeptic say this, but they are not really in tune with the whole mgtow thing, are they? So they don't really understand. Now, I do not think that saying this is necessarily as bad as the feminists, because it is rooted in science. There is scientific research done on this, but it's a line that is crossed. There is no line that is being crossed here. I don't think anybody really is against what you're saying. They may disagree with it, but they're not against it. No line is being crossed here, Teal'c. You are on a mission to paint us all as just entertainers, ponage people with no argument whatsoever. You've got the argument. You're Kool-Aid. Drink the mgtow poison Kool-Aid, people, because it's based on fact and science. Maybe facts that we have cherry-picked ourselves, perhaps, theoretically speaking. I cannot prove that, people, but please get in with this. Please, take our Kool-Aid. We are right, they are wrong, they're nothing but the shallow, E-fame-driven lunatics. We are the academic, rigorous people you should be listening to, because we are superior, the final form, as I said before. You're stooping very low, Teal'c. I didn't think you could stoop this low.
As soon as we hit that crucial line of daring to suggest that this arrangement led women to prefer men who protect them, prefer men who are the fittest and actively seek them out, and that it would lead men who fulfill the role of carer and provider to be more likely to reproduce, hold up, absolutely not. There is no biological basis for attraction or society at all, for some people at least, even though this is the exact same process that leads to the human universal of preferring sugars and fats, thus perpetuating a feedback loop of behaviour to the environment.
Again, people, can you see what he's doing? This isn't really about the hypergamy, nor is this really about the whole gynocentrism thing. This is about picking his targets and criticising. The first half was clickbait to draw you in, and here he is going to tell you what he believes, what you should believe. He is basically strawmanning the almost most of the manosphere because there are some people who disagree with him. He is basically saying to us that we are no better than the feminists who spout pseudoscientific bullshit, while saying that his potentially pseudoscientific bullshit is better than theirs because it's based on a few facts. Saying that people do not believe that there's a biological basis to attraction? Who doesn't believe that in the manosphere, or people who are friends of the manosphere, allies, you know, egalitarians, etc. People who actually know the science. I don't think anybody on our side would disagree with that unless they were slightly SJW or feminist anyway, because they're the only types of people that I can envision even to disagree with that and say that it's not biological, it's something spiritual or whatever they say. I don't know, that was probably a straw man in and of itself as well. But nonetheless, Tilde, this is exactly what you're doing. You are picking your targets and attacking them while spoon-feeding people this drivel.
Those who preferred the beneficial behaviour owing to minute brain differences that enabled fractionally different behavioural output were fitter in reproduction for such a long time frame that it became the norm. Phrase this in simple things like behaviour around eating, no problem. Frame it as a statement for preference in mating partners that then informs societal structure as a result of the basic process of survival of the fittest, absolutely not.
Prove it, Tilde, prove it. Who are these people? Who's saying this? Which parts are saying this? Is it the PUAs, the mgtows? Well, some mgtows. This is a mgtow talking point, what you're talking about here. But not all mgtows follow this necessarily, although you would like that, wouldn't you? You'd like to spoon feed these people because, you know, they can't have the freedom of choice to discern from the facts whether or not this is true. Hey, Tilde, prove it. Who's saying this? It could be anyone. Or is it just a straw man? Is it the straw man? Is this what it is? I've never heard of the straw man. What do they believe? Oh, they believe in this bullshit that you're saying to me, right? Well, I never would have guessed.
Why? Why, as soon as this exact same process is used to identify the reason why women have, on aggregate, not all, but a majority, preference in always marrying up, to use the phrase loosely, this becomes a problem, even though it is easily observable and quantifiable.
If I was to hazard a guess, maybe it's because hypergamy is basically the idea that, rather quite bluntly, that women are programmed to be gold diggers, basically.
Humans play a hypergamous mating game. They always have, and probably always will. Females determine what it is that males need to do in order to reproduce, or at least go through the motions of reproduction. The existence of contraception does not change the rush in the brain that people get upon successful intercourse.
It does actually. Some people think it's not as good if you use protection than it would be if you don't use protection. But please continue, Tilde. Continue pouring the Kool-Aid onto me, please. I love it so much.
It is still the driving factor behind that basic urge. This basic framework explains why it has been well documented that women have easier times getting sex than men, with some studies finding that women will respond in the positive to proposition 0% of the time with zero incentive, yet men respond positively some 75% of the time, also with zero incentive, beyond the knowledge that they simply get to have sex. Women hold pretty much all the cards. If a woman becomes pregnant, she wins the game of life. She knows she will produce her genes. It is simply a matter of picking which genes will benefit her genes the most should they be mixed. Men are not so fortunate in their choice. They must demonstrate their worthiness, and even then success in mating does not assure reproduction for a man.
What if she's raped to have sex with someone drunkenly and keeps the baby? What if that guy she didn't really see as worthy? Just saying, Tilde.
Explaining why many men feel the need to have as many sexual partners as possible. If a woman could reproduce on her own, no need for external input, and all the necessary care was provided for her child, how many women would seek a stable partner? The answer is very few. Why commit to someone when you can get everything that person would provide, but without any of the downsides of having to deal with a person? Why self-impose any limitation when you could have total freedom? This is hypergamy left unchecked, and actually forms the basis of pretty much all feminism's demands. We want women in XYZ fields. Men must do this for us. Why? Because if you don't, you hate women and won't ever get laid.
Also because they perceive the world to be ran by men, therefore the men have to do all the shit because they hold all the cards. Apparently. It's not so simple as that. It's so funny that you say that we say that feminists are wrong because they're morons. Well, here you are saying that, oh, well, they think that all their demands should be met by men because these men would be considered sexist and blah 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 blah. I fail to see the difference, Tilde.
We want the state to force companies to provide childcare. Men have to do this for us, men being the majority tax provider. Why? Because if you don't, it's because you hate women and won't ever get laid. Rinse and repeat ad nauseum for every issue feminism has ever talked about.
It's not their only argument, Tilde. You should know better than this. Since when did you start generalizing people's arguments? I'm just saying, you're stooping very low, almost down to their level, I must say. I mean, is that blasphemy to say, people, to someone like him?
Why is it the anti-feminist, anti-social justice warrior crowd is suddenly so anti-science when it comes to this point?
Anti-science, says the guy who thinks all women are pre-programmed to be gold diggers. Right, okay, whatever, you got us. Explain, TLD. Because you see, yet again, the whole point of that was not to say that this is this because of the evidence. This is to smear the people who disagree with him. And it's not even the feminists. The feminists are used as a point of reference and comparison. Are you still not convinced yet, people?
The people who will quite happily take the side of science when it suits to explain certain social patterns and social layouts suddenly spurn this very same science when it perfectly explains why the introduction of a welfare state and female birth control leads to the total disenfranchisement of men and basically the removal of any value they would have in society, leading us to the so-called man drought.
And you wonder why they disagree with you, TLD? Because you're saying shit like this. That's why. Because it's not so easily as quantifiable as you would like to think it is. Where do you even get this from? Who's actually researching this? I want to know. I want your sources. I want your citations needed, please. Because, well, for some people, it's not enough to just say, oh, here are the facts. Accept it. No, they have to literally check this to make sure it is right. They cannot just listen and believe.
With highly educated, high-earning women suddenly demanding that men must do better because they refuse to do what men have been more than willing to do throughout history and date and marry down. And I know what the reaction to this will be, even from those who, as I've said, will happily use this same science when it suits them.
Oh, you know that, do you, mate? You know that. You can read our minds.
They will turn on this explanation and call it pseudoscience, call it biological determinism, call it anything that they can to attempt to discredit the very same process that they happily defend and exploit in their own argumentation when it suits them.
And you're going to strawman them and paint them as entertainers trying to get some E-fame. Well, ironically enough, I'm wondering who is letting the E-fame get to their heads here, mate. I'm just wondering. Maybe they do think it's pseudoscience. Maybe there is no basis to any of this, to what you're saying at all. And I don't think people are using the same science that you are using. I've not seen Sargon use it. I've not used Dr. Random McCann use it. In fact, he doesn't like this. He doesn't agree with this, as far as I'm aware. The honey badgers don't use it. I don't use it, although I might use stuff that is actually quantifiably proven, but I don't use mgtow talking points. Spino doesn't use it, Fiffin doesn't use it, Hagbar Celine doesn't use it, Tyler Preston doesn't use it. I could go on. You use it, Stardusk uses it, Sandman uses it, Turd Flinging Monkey uses it. Am I seeing a pattern here? Coincidence? I think not.
There is no judgment in this explanation, no good or bad, right or wrong, in pointing out that this process happens, that owing to evolutionary pressure and the rise of certain reproductive strategies as a result of that pressure, that this strategy should then become a maladaptation because technology moves so much faster than biology. There is no judgment here. This is not a call for people to stop sleeping with whoever they want, not a call for men at large to man up and do what women want them to do, as they have always done for millennia, the very core of gynocentrism, nor is it a call for women to abandon all standards and desires and get back to being baby-making kitchen utensils. No, this is merely an observation of what is happening as a result of what has happened in the past.
You're right, Tilde. This isn't about doing all of that. This is about telling us that we're wrong, you're right, because contrary to what you're saying, that has not been the general gist of this video, nor what you've actually been saying. This is to paint us all as people who shouldn't be taken seriously because we do ponage videos. That's all we do. You know, even the people who don't agree with you, who don't do ponage videos, they're just ponage videos. They're entertainers. They're not to be taken seriously, no matter how much academic rigor they have or intellectual prowess or what degrees they have. Oh no, it doesn't matter because we're the ones with intellectual rigor. We're the ones who have the facts behind us. These people, they just leave it when they want to. They're selective. They're hypocrites. We're pure. We're great. We're amazing. That's what it's for. It's to signal the line in the sand, the draw battle lines. This is what it's for, isn't it, Tilde? This is what the whole clickbait half of the video was about. Just to carry on into this, to convince further people of what you believe without a choice. Because you don't give them a choice. You don't believe in giving these people a choice. But you know what? I'm rattled on far too long. Continue, Tilde.
We know that behaviours have links in biology. We know that these two things feed back into each other. Traits that lead to success in an environment are passed on. Traits that are less successful do not. If, in an environment, one such trait is more beneficial than another, Is it any surprise that over the generations that trait becomes more prominent in that population in that geographical area? This is, after all, why there are humans with different skin pigmentation. It's really no surprise that the patterns of skin pigmentation overlap almost directly with levels of sun exposure. And God help you should you dare mention anything surrounding intelligence and genetic populations, because that clearly means you're just a racist promoting pseudoscience because evolution stops at the neck, but only in humans, because let's not forget that you can breed animals for behaviour and intelligence.
We're not like other animals, TLD. We're human beings. We have far more complex brains than even they do. Case in point, just because you have two people who are dumb and two people who are smart doesn't necessarily mean that the child will be just as smart or just as dumb as these people. On average, you could say that hypothetically, but we have no idea. This whole part of science is all hypothetical at the moment. We don't really know. Yet you're going to tell us that it's a fact? You know, who's calling you a racist? Who's calling you a racist? Again, you are so cowardly in this video. You will not call out anybody. Who are these people? Again, is it these straw men? Is it the straw men community that you're invoking yet again?
Dogs being the perfect example where humans have controlled the breeding and environment to produce whatever they want, but that process can't happen naturally in humans because of geography, environmental pressures, and social selection based on those criteria. Not in people. Never. Not even once. But that's another topic for another time.
Yeah, we can't alienate too many people. This straw man community is already as riled up as it is.
So let's wrap this up, shall we?
Oh, finally.
Anti-feminism as it stands seems to be rapidly moving towards being nothing more than a science-denying entertainment industry, with commentators rising left, right and centre looking for a quick grab of e-fame and to cash in by preaching to the ever-hungry choir eager to reconfirm their already held position that Anita Sarkeesian doesn't understand video games, Lacey Green is stupid, MTV is a centre of race-baiting propaganda, and BuzzFeed is the internet equivalent of getting arse cancer in your brain.
Translated as the rest of the manosphere does not believe my version of science and what I believe is to be the case and what all this shit stems from. So I'm going to shame all of them, strawman them, present to them a false dichotomy of you cannot be entertaining and completely intellectual and serious. You cannot base the entertainment upon this massive in-depth knowledge of what is going on. No, you can only pick one or the other. This is also translated as you're either with me or you are against me.
Sure, this gets public attention. It gets a shit ton of views, but it does nothing other than keep people laughing while the building burns around them.
And as you've admitted, yours is no better. Yours is also allowing the building to burn while you're attacking us and keeping us in there.
This loose connection of content creators risks moving firmly into the science-denying social constructionist mindset they deride feminism for every day, wherein everything is explained by feminism's corruption of women or the meme of cultural Marxism ruining the youth and the political left, and how everything can be changed if we just wish it hard enough, because everything is a social construct except when science favours you. Then it's biology, but never at any other time.
You see, this is him doing what the alt-right and other right-wingers do, where they see someone who's left-leaning, or they think is left-leaning, and then go, oh, you're just an SJW because you disagree with what I have to say. This is literally the same thing. This is what I see from GGR people. Gamergate Revolt. They will call anybody an SJW light or an SJW just because they disagree with them. This is exactly what he is doing. This is painting us all with one brush because we disagree with him. We're anti-science because we do not believe his brand of science. His science is infallible, but yet it doesn't stop to question his own just to make sure that maybe, yes, he is correct, because that's what an actual scientist does. No, he takes it as gospel. He listens and believes, and expects us to do the same, but when we do not, we're anti-science. We're SJWs. We're no better than them. We're just people who make people laugh and allow the building to burn. Well, you're the one who refuses to call the fire brigade and stops other people from doing so, slapping mobile phones out of their hands and saying, no, they're pseudoscientists. Let them burn! Or, you're in the building with us, and rather than allow us to escape, you've boarded out all the bloody entrances, and you're stopping us from, again, calling the fire brigade, because pseudoscience, because we disagree with you on how to escape. TLD, do you even know what you're saying?
All while refusing to look any deeper to understanding how this environment has enabled these behaviors to manifest, and then how those behaviors have fed back to change the flexible modern environment we've built for ourselves in order to make its own perpetuation easier.
Yet another straw man, Teal dear. Can you do better and at least tell us a truth? A half-truth? Anything that isn't a lie that you concocted in order to shame us?
And these are the people who, without one hint of irony or self-awareness, say it's communities like the mgtow community who are just as bad as the feminists.
Just because Armoured Skeptic said it doesn't mean that we all say it. Generalization.
The community that has been speaking about the necessity of understanding the biological factors, the relation of society to biology via the study of sociobiology, and the importance of evolutionary psychology for at least half a decade now.
Yeah, because, you know, labelling an entire community as one demographic is okay when Teal there does it. But when the feminists do it, or when people like me do it, oh, it's wrong, we're anti-science. We're hypocrites. We lack self-awareness. We are ironic. What's funny is the only person who is displaying any of this is right in front of me, Teal dear.
They might not get everything right first time. No one can. And there's certainly individuals within who will misappropriate the findings and data and place moral judgment where there is none or should not be any. And I've certainly had my disagreements with those individuals, but at least that community is willing to explore the ideas and tread outside the safe space of exclusively blaming culture and politics for everything. Something that is the very core of feminist critical theory.
But we're just wrong, really. That's it. We're wrong. We're keeping the whole community back from moving forward and stopping the authoritarians. Stop contradicting yourself. Stop trying to say, oh, it's okay, even though you're doing all this. I forgive you. It's still okay to take the Kool-Aid. Fuck off, Teal dear.
It's funny how, even with the ever-burgeoning ranks of anti-feminist entertainers, that there has been no change societally, no change in policy, no change in the court system's favouring of women, no change in the legal stances around genital mutilation.
Teal dear, I don't know if you've been living under a rock for the last week or two, but let me put it to you like this. We are a minority, but growing. Most people in the world do not believe what we believe, and they certainly do not believe what you in particular believe. We are up against a juggernaut, a thing that has been having its tentacles in society for the last 40 years, 50 years, 100 years at most. They've certainly had an influence for a very long time, and for us to suddenly do all of that in half a decade, destroy all of that and rebuild it and make it fairer is asking a hell of a lot and is unfair. We have only just started. We cannot, through the power of YouTube alone, destroy feminism. We cannot. That is laughable. And what, just because we should do it your way means that we'll end it quickly? No, that's bullshit, Teal dear.
Sure, I understand the need to fight feminism on these fronts. After all, it is feminism that must necessarily be fought, because it was feminism that put things like the Duluth model into our courts, that pushed for affirmative action plans. But without understanding why people are so pliable to the "won't somebody please think of the women's" reasoning that feminism uses, we will never be able to challenge it and help people to understand what is really happening.
And yet their numbers are the lowest they've ever been. I think people don't fall for it as much as you think they do, Teal dear. But then again, maybe they're neutral and they need convincing. I don't think it is what you think it is.
I don't place any blame on anyone in this.
No, you're just going to turn us all into a blanket demographic and then assign blame because you're a coward, and you will not call people out on this.
This piece is not meant as a finger point or a war cry or as a declaration, promotion or degradation of any side of this or anything of that nature.
But that is exactly what you have created. You cannot just say, oh, I'm saying all this, but no, I don't really mean it. Nah, of course not. I'm not doing any of this that I'm really doing. Seriously? Really, Teal dear? You think we're that stupid?
Although inevitably when any opinion is expressed, some people will insist on taking it like that.
Because it is like that, Teal dear. Because it is.
I do not blame people who fill the essential role of anti-feminist entertainer. There's a lot of stupidity out there, and fighting the casual stupidity of everyday feminists is something that needs to happen to raise social awareness of the problems. but it does nothing to deal with the larger problems that the views of feminism have become entrenched in the law and to some degree entrenched in academia.
No, because as apparently as essential as we are part of the problem. We are the ones making it even worse, because we just mock. That's all we do, we call them morons, innit? But we're essential at making everything worse. You cannot just say one thing and then another, TLD. I'm not sure if this is cognitive dissonance or just you being dishonest.
But even attacking that does not solve the larger problem that people inherently favour women and place their problems over the problems of men.
What, and you think you can, TLD? Really? Such arrogance.
And I wonder about this community. Do people even care? Do they even want to know the root cause of these issues? Or do they just want another fix of a feminist being slammed, another video debunked, another social justice warrior destroyed like another slave forced unarmed to the gladiators in the Colosseum?
Both, actually. They want to know how it's happened, why it's happened. I think that's the question, isn't it? I've always pondered this. Why is it happening? Why are they doing this? How is it happening? What can we do to solve it? While I also like seeing them getting their ass kicked. Figuratively speaking, of course. Nobody likes being beaten up unless it's in a boxing or martial arts match. But that's the thing, isn't it? You're now assuming intent. You are assuming things that you do not know. Citations are needed once more. Hitchens, Razor level citations that are needed. TLD. How does it feel to see the own term that you coined used against you? I've always wondered that, TLD.
Do they care to actually learn? To actually know what is happening?
I'd say most of them probably do want to learn. Isn't that the point? We want to learn things so that we can combat this thing. But the thing is, the reason why you think this is because they don't believe what you believe, TLD. That's why you are butthurt that they do not believe what you think, that they think you are wrong, so therefore we're all wrong because we do not believe in hypergamy and all this other bullshit. TLD, just because they don't agree with you doesn't mean they're not intellectually curious. You and Stardust can speak in your ivory towers about all of us, about how the average person is not intellectually curious, but at least they're not in their ivory towers casting judgment on everyone and then saying that they're not casting judgment, they're just casting judgment.
Or are they just here for the modern blood sport that is the YouTube response video genre?
Oh, fuck off with the hyperbole, TLD. Quit with that hyperbole. This is nonsense. It's not a modern blood sport, it's a bloody video.
Recently I saw an article about rising suicide rates. The headline: Suicide rate hits 30-year high. Female rate spikes, while males majority. A mere head nod to males being the majority, a well enough known fact that has persisted for years. But what's the real issue? The spike in female suicides, the spike in the group around 3 times less likely to kill themselves is the real story. Of course it is. Just another issue where women are preferred, even if it is an issue that affects mostly men. Just like the rates of university admission, just like the rates of homelessness, just like rates of legal genital mutilation, just like rates of child custody and alimony, just like the legal sentencing gap and many others. But there is no society outrage, not even a blink. And yet people will still say, with all the evidence in front of them, with a straight face, it's all society, it's all politics, it's all cultural Marxism, and gynocentrism don't reels.
And you will just think everything is biological, everything is not cultural, it's all biological. You will sit there and say that we're part of the problem because we disagree with you. I don't think anybody says that the world is not gynocentric. We just disagree with what we think is gynocentric compared to you. You will sit there and say that we're causing all the problems to persist because of the way we make videos or what we think. You're accusing us of thought crime and doing things wrong and being no better than them, when really this is you doing the exact same thing, TLD. It is not our fault that this is what the world thinks. It's not our fault that they continue to think like this. We cannot change their minds completely. We cannot. We are mortals. We just have our own opinions. We can use the facts, but in the end it is up to them if they want to watch it, let alone believe it. But you don't want that. You don't believe that. You think they should just believe it because the facts are there. What if your facts are wrong, TLD? I'm just saying. You see, people will now probably think, but Chris, how can you put him in the same sentence as Sandman? How can you say that about about Teal'c. But the thing is, Sandman doesn't try to force his opinions onto other people, or at least thinks that we should do that. He doesn't think that. Teal'c does, and that makes him worse, almost, doesn't it? If you think about it. It's funny that I'm supposed to be the one who's doing it for the E-fame. I'm the one who's doing it for the money. Yet here's bloody Teal'c, using clickbait tactics, using drama to sell his mgtow-influenced philosophy. If that's not irony, I don't know what is.